In terms of the economy, South Africa has several major challenges. A key voter issue is employment. South Africa's unemployment rate is the highest in the world. According to official figures, the rate stood at more than 30% in the fourth quarter of 2023. That means nearly 8 million South Africans do not have jobs. The country's power crisis is another drain on the economy. Scheduled power cuts cost the economy nearly $14 billion between 2020 and 2023. That subtracted a staggering 15% of the country's cumulative GDP growth, according to Nova Economics. While South Africa's economy is projected to grow, it will be muted. The International Monetary Fund projects global growth at about 3%. South Africa's projection for 2024 barely shy of 1%. Okay, to talk us through what South Africa is facing in this all-important election and what the result could mean for the nation, we're joined by Cameron Hume. Cameron is an advisor at the Richardson Center and a former U.S. ambassador to South Africa. Thanks very much for joining us. I really appreciate your time and kind of want to cut right to it. I want to talk about the ruling party perhaps losing its grip, but MK, a surprise political party that came really out of nowhere. It threatens to divide voters. How do you see this shaping up over the next 24 or 48 hours?
Well, South Africa in the past has had peaceful elections, and I would expect that there'll continue to be a peaceful election. I think we don't know. We'll have to see the results, but MK is concentrated particularly in the area around Durban, KwaZulu-Natal, and there has been violence in that area before, but I hope that we don't see that.
Okay. And the ANC, projected to lose the majority for the first time since apartheid. Your take on that?
Well, I think if you look at a lot of countries, when they become independent, when they become free, when they have a new government, the political force that brought them to that point gets 1 or 2 generations where they're re-elected. And for South Africa, excuse me, it's now 30 years, so it's not surprising. But the problem that the South African National Congress faces is the high unemployment, particularly among youth. And that means that the young people who viewed their lives with hope are now wondering if they should have hope. And that's the problem for the ANC.
Yeah, and also to kind of expand on that just a bit more, a lot of young voters, more than ever before, they didn't grow up under apartheid. And you talked about the ruling party basically getting 1 or 2 generations. So the challenge of using apartheid, that struggle as a major political platform, you certainly see the problem if people didn't grow up under that horrific form of government.
Yeah, it's a wasting asset to make that claim. It undoubtedly, what I keep in mind is the incredible inequality in South Africa. That remains, and now you have, of course, a large, wealthy Black African population as well, but that's largely associated with connections to power in the ANC, and that's where you get the resentment.
Gotcha. Okay, the unemployment challenge, more than 30%. It's not sustainable. How can any political party begin to address this?
Well, first, it's been that way for 30 years. And I think they've had a policy of maintaining a hard currency. I think if they had a more expansionary fiscal policy, they could have done better. And the other problem is their lack of management of infrastructure. The national airline goes bankrupt. The electrical company doesn't produce electricity reliably. The transport sector is weaker than it was. All of this has taken 1% or 2% of growth out of that economy. And I think there has to be some responsibility taken by the ANC for those problems.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at just one of those infrastructure crisis problems that you outlined, the electricity, the power crisis. There have been no power cuts for about 100 days, but this problem isn't going to go away. And as we detailed leading into you, it is a huge, huge drain on the economy. When will the country begin to address this?
Well, they are addressing it, but inadequately. And I think it'll take 5 years for them to turn that around. I'll give you an example. They export copper, but they don't have copper in the country. How do they export the copper? People steal the electrical transmission wires and sell it as scrap metal. You can't run an economy when that's happening.
No, and that's probably a big reason that people do that is the 30% unemployment rate and trying to make ends meet. The economic sectors are in the most trouble. Trade, the strength of currency, state-owned enterprises, as you talked about, they're weak and they have weak management.
Well, these are all human. These are human issues, so they can be addressed. And South Africa has a lot of strengths, but the government has to become more serious about those basic economic challenges.
Okay, you talked about the strengths. Let's talk just a bit about the fact South Africa is the most industrialized, technologically advanced and diversified economy. So are there areas that the people looking outside in should be positive about?
Well, you know, there are strong points in South Africa, but the unemployment, I think the poor education system for the average Black African in South Africa, you get much better education in surrounding countries. Those are you need human capital to prosper. That takes time to build, and I think the ANC has not been adequately focused on human capital, particularly education for the masses.
Cameron Hume, I can't thank you enough. I could see the frustration in your face at times. These are problems you've talked about time and time again, but to our international audience, they don't get to hear these every day. So thanks so much.
Okay, we live in hope.
We do live in hope.